Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Super-Fanta-Fi. This being a show where I talk about the TV shows of the supernatural, fantasy, and/or science fictional genre. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about Shadow and Bone, Season 2, Episode 7, penultimate episode of the season. A great episode. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. Fact of the matter is, it feels like a lot happened in this episode. But obviously you have, first and foremost, Mal having to come to terms with the revelations after last episode. Revelations of, once again, all the stuff between him and Alina and just like the life they can never have. Like they always struggle. They found their way to each other, thought this was going to be in the end all be all. Like maybe we finally have our chance now that they finally found each other again and what's there started sparking. And now it's like, yeah, that's all getting cut short. And, ultimately Mal gets a visit from his newly discovered cousin, because it makes sense. I mean, we saw Bagra do it last episode, and she said, like, right, because of a blood connection, and they are family. So he's able to reach out to Mal and saying, like, right, you don't have to do this, Mal. Like, there has to be another way. You can just leave. Basically, it's like, yeah, kind of take Alina with you and go. Because it's like, yeah, like, get rid of the two obstacles in your way. But also, it's because, like, right, think about what happens when you're gone. She's going to be devastated. Do you think she'll really be able to hang on when you are gone? But at the very least for Mal, it's like, at the end of the day, she will have the entire country backing her up. But even then, she won't need that for long, because you are going to die, cousin. It's basically both of us are running out of time. That's also something that connects us besides blood, because my time is coming up, but so is yours. Mirzast is going to be the end of you because it's slowly killing you right now. And I love that look on Kierkegaard's face, because you could tell it was like it was grinding his gears a little bit, like Mal getting kind of the upper hand in the conversation like that. But yeah, it's like, nah, like sweet dreams, but I'll be seeing you soon enough. But it's like, yeah, he knows. And now it's like Mal has even less time, because like, right, we can't let Kierkegaard get to me, because if he kills me, he takes all the power. And Alina's trying to figure all of this out too. And she ends up confiding in, Nikolai. And even Nikolai's like, hey, maybe there could be another way, but there doesn't seem to be one right now. It's like, for her, it's like, and once again, a lot of the points I brought up last episode of like, you could tell that immediate like despair that overcame Alina when she realized, like, right, she's the one. She's like, I became so obsessed with power. I was so quick, like, Firebird, Firebird, Firebird. I have to get this power. And once again, she was like, I was warned of the consequences, but I didn't listen because it never crossed my mind. I was like, there's no way Mal would. And, it's like, that's the effed up thing about this universe, that, like, the poetic irony of, like, right, you've been chasing the Firebird. It's been by your side the entire time. It's even sadder, too, because at certain points you kind of pushed him away. But also, it's like, you wanted to do all this so the two of you could be together, and he will be the means of saving Ravka, and everything. So, like, to get everything else to lead the Second Army, to be the one who kind of helps reunite Ravka, you have to sacrifice the person you care about most in this world. The only person you care about most in this world. So, I mean, she cares about other people too, but it's like, yeah, it's like Mal's that important to her. She loves him. And so, and even, it's not like Nikolai's pushing to be like, well, sacrifices have to be made. He didn't want this to happen too, because he's come to start liking Mal, And it's like, yeah, there's a camaraderie that they've built that he didn't want this to happen. Plus, it's like, he doesn't want to see her in pain. Even his buddy, I believe his buddy's name is Dominic, is like, oh, like, the fact is you gave that compass, you never give that compass to anyone, so that must mean you really care about it. He's like, yeah, but her heart belongs to someone else. And he's like, at the end of the day, when this is all said and done, I want her to be happy. That's all I want for her at the very least. Like, even if we can't be together, and he's like, oh, the fact is you're in love with someone you can't be with. And he's like, his buddy's like, yeah, it's almost comical. And, looks at him and says, like, somberly, like, almost, And it's like, I thought that was kind of a nice moment they had. And then even later on, Mal having that moment with Nikolai was so beautiful and touching too, where it's like, come on, like, there has to be another way. But once again, for Mal, it's like, he thought, like, once they had found their way to each other again, that it's like, right, this is kind of supposed to be our second chance to kind of, no more excuses, no more, like, wasting time. And now it's like, here we are. And for him, it's like, he was envious of Stormhond. It's like, because he's like, when I met you, too, like, finding Alina again and even meeting Stormhond, it's like, it was like, for him, it's like, so this is what a life is and what a life could be, and he enjoyed it. And sadly, that's all kind of in the rear view now with what's coming up. And for him, it's like, he's asking Nikolai, it's like, when it's all said and done, be there for Alina, but he's like, no, Mal, don't talk. He's like, please. He's like, deserve her. Like, she deserves to be happy. And I think you could help her. Like, I don't want her to be alone when my time is up, you know? But when the time comes up about everything, ultimately everyone, like, Mal reveals it in front of everybody, being like, yeah, like, me and Alina will go to the fold. Everyone else will go face Kirigan at the orphanage, because that's where he's lining up to draw her into a trap, because she wanted to go face him alone, but it's like, she can't. Without the sword that can cut through the shadows, like, nothing can stop his creatures right now, so it's like, it's suicide going up against Kirigan right now. But Mal was like, no, revealed himself to be the amplifier, and just everyone hearing that realization and what it means. Even Jinya, like, kind of reaching out to, especially where things are between her and David, and now it's like, right, like, she knows how important Mal is to, even without things between her and David being what they are, it's still a thing of like, I know how important Mal is. I've always known how important he is to you. But also, I think it probably cuts even deeper, because it's like, right, me and David are where we are. And at the very least, I thought like, oh, like, you two being a surefire thing and this being what has to happen. But it's like, right, this is what has to happen. But David suggests a different plan. It's like, right, what if we just take... Well, actually, Tamar and David kind of throw out some ideas, because Tamar's like, well, if I, like, stop Mal's heart for, like, 2 minutes so he's dead, like, would that be enough for you to take on the Firebird to, like, destroy the fold, and then, like, I can resuscitate him? And even David suggesting, like, we take a finger or something from Mal and we use it to amplify you, so the moment he passes away, like, the process can immediately start through, like, his amputated finger or whatever appendage it was going to end up being his pinky. But yeah, that way you can do what you need to do. That way Mal doesn't have to die. And even it's like, oh, it sounds dangerous, and Nikolai is like, I'm down for the plan, it's like, we can find another way. But Mal's like, no, like, we can't waste time. But Alina's like, at the very least, let me try this, trust me on this. If all else failed, then we'll go down that route. But the thing is, Alina was never going to really, really go down that route. She's hoping for everything to find another way. So, also speaking of Jinya, like, her and David had, like, a really sweet moment where it's like, because David was saying, like, right, a stone can say so much about a person, and she's like, oh, what is an emerald? And it's like the sad element of, like, yeah, an emerald is something reserved for the royalty, but it's also like, she's like, yeah, it's something that's so beautiful and for the royals, but so far out of touch. So she was almost like not meant to be touched or something like that. So it's like, it's symbolic of herself, but it's like, what's stronger than are there any that are stronger than an emerald? And she chose a ruby, and he was like, yeah, a ruby is worth more than an emerald or something like that, or stronger than an emerald. So it was very representative of her. I thought that was kind of a beautiful conversation they had. Even getting Nadia's brother, because his arm had to be amputated. Was it last episode, I believe? No, not last episode. It was episode 6. His arm had to be amputated, and David made him like a prosthetic, instead. I mean, just like this is definitely more Full Metal Alchemist. Nadia's brother's arm is more Full Metal Alchemist than but obviously, like, even Kirigan's hand's still kind of Full Metal Alchemist in certain regards, because I made a reference to Edward Overgan, the whole thing with Adamel thing. But either way. But with this new plan in mind, Kirigan, like, rallies the troops of, like, yeah, we're in this together. There's no, like, separation between Grisha and, like, normal people. It's like, we're all in this together. We're Ravkins, and we're going to see this through. For him, it's like, hope and I think this is a nice parallel with everything with Inej, where it's like, hope is dangerous, but he's like, the fact of the matter is, he sees that I see it shining in each and every one of you of what could be, what can be, if we all kind of come together in this moment. So let's do this. So they were going to take a ship to go against Kirigan and kind of, like, handle the whole orphanage situation, but he'd already rallied his troops, some of which have already been amplified by Bagra's finger, and they ended up bringing down the ship. A lot of the soldiers died, but luckily Dominic, Nadia, her brother Dominic, were all, like, able to get off the ship in time. And it's like, right, got them trailing after you back to the fort. Kirigan does his thing of, like, right, like, to force Alina's hands. It's like, right, what will you do? Will you basically give in to, like, the great sacrifice, or will you give up your heart? Like, what I mean, what will you put? Basically, I'm butchering it, but it's like, what are you going to put first, Ravka, the greater good of bringing down the fold, or are you going to sacrifice your love? And so he ends up expanding the fold. And I once again, I think it is such a neat thing that he does it. Well, I mean, that he isn't immune to the Volcra. Obviously, we learned last season the Volcra can rip him apart, but luckily he has his, was it Neshoshoi? I'm butchering it, the Shadow Monsters. So, they immediately act upon anything hurting him. So, as he's expanding the fold and Volcra coming after him, the creatures kill the Volcra. So, and the entire fort gets encompassed by it. And then there's like, back to the Jinya and David thing. David making the ultimate sacrifice, especially because the parallel of like, right, I wasn't there for you before and you were hurt. I'm not going to do that again. I love you too much. And I'm going to do for him. It's like, I'm going to make the right choice and I'm going to sacrifice myself for you. You sacrifice yourself so I can get this time. It's time for me to do that for you, you know? And because once again, he's talked about how strong she is, how like she's steeled on the inside, Steel. But he saves them out Hein and the Shadow Monster is there. We don't know what happens beyond that, whether David died or not, but that's heartbreaking. Things got super, like, I mean, obviously you had the Volcra in the fort, like, ripping soldiers apart, munching on soldiers. You also had, also once again, the Shadow Monsters like stalking around. You had just on the like outside of the expanded fold, you had Nikolai and the others running from the Grisha, and it's just like, man, that whole sequence, that entire sequence and situation is wild, because I feel like it's like that's probably like a large chunk of this episode is that fight, and the fact is that you have because that element ended up being super bloody when they ended up kind of blinding the Grisha for a little bit, and then everyone's going in. Like, obviously their armor protects them from any damage, and it's like, like we got some headshots, some stabs. It's just like full fighting, and it's just like it got gnarly and bloody. I mean, this is a war after all. But I don't know why. I guess because in my head I just kind of, once again, I always underestimate how far a TV-14 can go. I still continue to do that. Because I think the show is a TV-14, but it's still like, it still has gore. It still has moments like that where it's like, like blood splatter from slices. I mean, even the fact is that one of the main Grisha, she's the tide maker, so she was able to create water in the air, and one of the others froze it, and it came down like a hail of like icicles and was stabbing everything. And Nikolai like ran through like he got shot by like a machine gun. And he sacrificed himself for Nikolai because he's like, I knew back then, he's like, right, when you took a shot and if it was over just a few, like a little more to the left, you'd be dead right now. But he's like, that moment is what made me know that you would be a good king for Ravka, because you were able to keep hope alive even in that moment when things seemed dire. You were joking and stuff like that. That's what this kingdom needs, is a king that isn't afraid of hope, that it will embrace hope and like give that hope to other people as well. And that's why his friend Dominic was willing to sacrifice himself, because it's like, be the king that Ravka deserves and needs, I mean, that whole sequence is just, there's like so much death, and it comes down to the wire, because by the end of it, I mean, also like, I love that, I didn't talk about it, but like, Nadia and her brother going full, like, almost Wonder Twins, because like her shoulder's jacked up right now, and so it's harder for her to like use her powers, and obviously he's got the new arm, so he has to quickly get adjusted to that, but both of them like clasping their hands together, almost like Wonder Twins wise, and then like, kind of using their powers at the same time. I was like, I thought that was so dope how they kind of worked in sync like that. There's even that moment Tamar had where she kind of got blown back and used both her hatchets to kind of like slow her like pushback. I was like, that looks so sick, dude. At the same time, like, that's all happening. The Crow squad made it through, and Niz showed up to back up Alina and Mao, and she's got the sword and was going to hand it to Alina, but it's like, nah, you handle it. Like, you're much better with the blade than anyone else. So, and because I thought, like, as a duress, like, maybe in some shape or form that it was going to be Jesper who ended up using it, but it's like, it makes more, I mean, for one, Inez is the last one who had the blade, but it also makes sense why you give it to your best, like, warrior on the team to, like, utilize it, so. I thought that was so dope. So Nina's there along with Zoya. They pick up Mal and Alina, and at the same time that's all happening, Toya takes care, because I was scared, like, it's like, oh, this is a molt. It could have still been the end result, but I thought she was going to try and have them, like, get on high cliff points and then, like, try and use water to, like, drown out the place. I thought that's what they were going to try and do, like, kind of flood the molt and kind of, like, drown all of them. I thought that might have been the route that they were going to go, but I mean, that still could have been the result, but either way, Toya swooped in, took everyone down, took down 4 by himself, went to meet up with his sister and everything, which was like exciting reunion. But it's like just when like Nikolai and the others were back into a corner, that's when Waylon, Jesper, and Cash show up, and it's like, yeah, this was my explosive expert. And Waylon's like, expert? He's like, yeah, the expert. And dude, the teamwork. And I love Jesper, like, wait, Stromo, why is he here? And Tamar's like, because, you know, around here they call him Nikolai. It's like, oh, such good friends with the Royal, of course. You know, it's like, I love it. It was such a dope moment. And then, like, when they were kind of going more on the offensive, especially Jesper kind of doing this thing, and it's like, and you know, I love like that she made that whole the main Grisha, she was making that whole point of like, hey, you you don't, if you were born Grisha, you would know his like the blessing, and then he does what Oval told him last episode, and he takes off his buttons of his jacket and starts throwing them. I'm like, yeah. And then also Waylon had some like powder, and it's the chemical from like last episode 6 and 7, the one that had them tripping balls and seeing stuff, hallucinating. Because like the dude tried to like shoot lightning and then like cast through his cane, and it ended up being a conductor, so all the electricity went there. He got the dust blown into his face, and he's seeing a bird. And I love that Tamar's there. I thought that was so beautiful. I'm like, oh man, he's tripping balls, and it turns out the bird is Tamar's axe. I was like, oh, I love that transition and that being what it was, because it makes that whole like bird flying towards him slowly, like in slow motion and stuff. It makes it even more impactful when it switches to end up being her axe. And then the last one tries to like attack them, but her fingers are missing, because in that moment, Jasper had cut off her finger. He had cut off her finger. I think every blow he threw, like all those like buttons he threw when he shifted them as a Duras, he ended up cutting off her fingers, and she didn't even realize it. But she couldn't use her powers, and then Nikolai's the one that got to put her down. I'm like, very poetic that he would be the one. I don't know why. I think fights like that are such a badass moment when you're like, I mean, I know people aren't a fan of it, but I like that that's like the final thing of Devil May Cry 2. It's like the boss fight, and it's just like how it ends. It's Dante like being right beside the main end, the final boss, and then shooting them in the head. Like, I think that's such a badass moment. Just Nikolai comes out of nowhere, got you, boom. I don't know, I mean, it's also because you're just like, it's a shame because all these Grisha are so wrapped around Kerrigan's head that like they let his madness sweep them up. And it's sad that things could have been different, but it's also like, nah, you need to be put down, especially for Nikolai. It's like, right, you killed my friend, you know, so this is done, this is over. But the others made their way to where the fold was first created all those centuries ago by Kerrigan, and they end up, Mal and Alina, like he acts as her amplifier and ends up, you know, the Firebird comes out and draws out her power, but before they can even enjoy that moment, Kerrigan shows up and he tries to cut Mal, but Alina uses her own cut, but decided, I think some of it splintered off and still hit Mal. And obviously it left Kerrigan with a deep wound, so it's like Mal's dying, but it's like Alina needs to kill him right now, because if she doesn't, he dealt the damaging blow, and it would be enough to kill him, and so the power would be Kerrigan's. And sadly, Nina got grabbed by one of the shadows at the time, so they don't even have a healer, right? I was like, well, Nina's a healer. No, that's not that's off the board now. Anesh still has the blade, but it's like, yeah, they're kind of backed into a corner now, and it's like Mal might die, and it's like, what's going to happen here? We'll have to wait and see. Also, I'm adding this in later because I completely forgot about it. I'll edit this in most likely at the very end of the review, but there's a whole Matthias thing. We catch up with it a little bit. Obviously, in honor of honoring their god, not believing in revenge and stuff, which is, I think it's interesting considering like how you're so quick to kill Grisha in your religion, but no, revenge is kind of a no-no. But even Pekka's like, oh, like, why rid yourself of that satisfaction? Even referencing like, oh, the satisfaction of being between a woman's legs, which makes him think about Nina and... Because Pekka knows how important Matthias is to Nina. And obviously he has leverage in that information because Matthias is just looking at this as an opportunity to get revenge. Because Pekka's like, right, like all that anger inside of you, I can find the person you really want to point it at, the person who screwed you over. So he's probably going to lure Nina here, and then Matthias is probably going to snap and kill her. I think it's going to be... I hope that doesn't end up being the case, but it could end up being the case just because of the sad thing of, because of her attempt to save him, everything she's done has been trying to save him, and he'll never fully know. And Pekka knows what she did, what she was going to, but also like he has no reason to let him know that, because it's like, hey, she also screwed me over. He doesn't know that's the same person that put him here, but he know like it will all work out beautifully because, well, Nina lied to him and betrayed him and served him up to Kaz, kind of helped with that whole situation. And now it's like, now I get to screw you over in that same regard. It's like, cool, bet. So, I once again, I hope Matthias just ultimately ends up killing Pekka, but that probably won't be the case. I hope he doesn't kill Nina, because I think that'd be tragic, but I think in the end, if not, he's going to end up switching places with her, putting her in Hellgate while he escapes, maybe even starts working with Pekka and helps Pekka escape. I don't know. But I just think he's going to basically give into that Fjord hate, because all this stuff is happening in Ravka. That's been the main focus. And obviously, like last season, the Fjorda stuff was in the background. But I think going forward, after everything is all said and done, Fjorda is going to be the main issue to deal with going forward. And I think Matthias' story is going to play into that tragic notion of like, yes, he was about to change, but in Nina's attempt to save him, she kind of put him in a situation down the road that ultimately pushes him back to being who he was. And he's going to go back to being a Druskel, and he's going to be a big enemy. And I think it's just going to be a tragic twist. Like, I hope at the very least Nina's alive to maybe hopefully fix that, rectify that thing. But I mean, who knows if they'll get that opportunity. It's going to be a really, like, I mean, out of any romance, this is the most Romeo and Juliet of the ones in the show. So I hope it has I don't expect it to have a happy ending, but I hope it doesn't have like the extremely tragic ending that it could easily have. If it's like middle tragic, they're both alive, but they're at odds, that's fine. I just hope he doesn't end up crossing the line and end up killing her. We'll ultimately have to wait to see where that kind of ends up taking. Obviously, the next episode's the season finale. It's going to be really, really interesting to see how this ultimately all plays out, how this ends. Will Alina still have to make the ultimate sacrifice and kill Mel? There's a good chance. Maybe they'll find another way around this. I don't know. I think this is the end. This episode being what it is called, it's like Meet You in the Meadow. You'd almost think that'd be the next episode and not this episode. But it makes sense because it's like the orphanage and stuff was attacked, but that was kind of a diversion. It was always going to be them coming after the fort and everything where Nikolai and the others are. But, yeah. Well, like I said, we'll ultimately have to wait to see how the season finale wraps all of this up and where everything stands at the end of it all. But really, that's all I wanted to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and goodbye.